Rahul Gandhi has asked us journalists what the Congress leader will say. How many Dalits are there amongst you? More young professionals from Jammu and Kashmir, from the country's Adivasi heartland.
Views expressed in this blog are hosted on my own website, are strictly personal and do not reflect the views of any organization.
Hello and welcome once again, friends, to Straight Bat, my weekly video blog where, as the title suggests, I comment with a straight bat. Now, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi's press conferences are often newsy and interesting because they are unscripted. You never know what the Congress leader will say and where and when he will say it. His most recent press meet made the headlines. It was on the caste census, but it was because of a direct question that Mr. Gandhi posed to the journalists assembled there that the video went viral. Listen in first to the question Rahul Gandhi posed to the journalists at the press conference.
इस कमरे में ओबीसी कितने हैं? हाथ उठा के दिखा दीजिए, देखिए मजा। नहीं, वो आप कैमरामैन है भैया, आपकी बात नहीं कर रहा हूं, मैं इनकी बात कर रहा हूं। तो ये सवाल है।
Now, to paraphrase again, Rahul Gandhi has asked us journalists, how many Dalits are there amongst you? How many Adivasis are there amongst you? How many OBCs are there amongst you? Just one camera person raised his hand to the last question posed. Strangely, Rahul Gandhi didn't for some reason see the video journalist as part of this instant poll he had undertaken, although remember, cameramen and camera teams are also an intrinsic part of news gathering. Mr. Gandhi's point, I guess, at one level is well taken. In a room of around 120 odd media persons, if only one person raises his hand when asked the question about being Dalit, Adivasi or OBC, you could argue that Mr. Gandhi has made an effective political point on the need for a caste census. Mr. Gandhi then argued that there could be no true democracy unless those who constitute the bulk of society were truly represented across decision-making professions in much larger numbers. Now, all of this is very well. Mr. Gandhi has clearly chosen to play the caste census card ahead of the 2024 general elections. But on Straight Bat today, I will seek to answer Mr. Gandhi's question with my own counter question. Should the caste composition of a newsroom really matter? And what does it say about us? You see, a few years ago, the NGO Oxfam, along with the news portal News Laundry, did a survey to analyze just how diverse Indian newsrooms were. The findings were strikingly telling. In leadership positions, as per the survey, of 218 people who were surveyed in leadership across print, TV and digital media outlets, 191 were occupied by people from the general category, or you could call them the so-called forward upper caste. None of the mainstream media houses had people belonging to scheduled caste or scheduled tribe categories in leadership roles. 2 from ST, SC categories held leadership positions, but in alternative media platforms. When it came to the print media, over 60% of the byline articles in English and Hindi newspapers were written by people from the general category. Less than 5% of the articles were written by people from SC, ST categories, and only 10% belonged to the numerically strong OBCs. Majority of the writers belong to dominant caste groups in both English and Hindi newspapers. Over 50% of the journalists who have written on caste and tribal issues belonged to dominant castes. No newspaper had a journalist from scheduled castes or scheduled tribes writing on caste and tribal issues. Let's turn from there to the magazines. Around 60% of the magazine stories were written by people from the general category. Around 5% of the stories were written by people from SC, ST categories. None of the magazines had any scheduled caste or scheduled tribe writer at the top. there were only a very few OBCs. Magazines had 14% of writers from SC category writing on caste and tribal issues, and just 3.6% among scheduled tribe writers. Let's turn to the electronic media. Prime time television. What did the data in that survey indicate? Around 56% and 67% of the anchors in English and Hindi primetime shows respectively belong to the dominant caste groups. None of the channels had any SC or ST anchors hosting primetime news debates. More than 60% of all panelists in Hindi and English primetime shows belonged to the general category. Less than 5% of the panelists in Hindi and English debates were from SC and ST groups. What is becoming clear as you see this data is that increasingly SC, STs are marginal to electronic media newsrooms. Digital media. What did it say about the new media of our times? Over 55% of the writers who wrote for various mainstream digital media outlets belong to the general category. Less than 5% of the articles were written by people from SC, ST groups. Now, none of what this Oxfam study reveals should come as a surprise. Just look at the surnames of most prominent news anchors, for example, in the country, and it will become amply clear that almost all of them belong to upper or dominant castes. My friend, the Dalit intellectual Chandrabhan Prasad, has been banging about this for years, but to little avail. It is his unshaken belief that a newsroom ecosystem is biased against the lower caste groups, against Dalits and Adivasis in particular. My response to him has been twofold over the years. I fully agree that we need greater diversity in newsrooms. But why single out newsrooms? Whether it be a corporate boardroom or any private sector company, there is a fair chance that the top posts will be occupied by people from the general category or the so-called upper caste. Caste privilege, my friends, is something that has been built into our system sadly over decades and centuries. And there is a direct correlation between caste identities, incomes, access to quality professional education and job opportunities. This is less about any conscious bias, more about the inherited privileges that are conferred by birth on those from certain socio-economic groups. That was my first response to him. My second response would be this: why should a newsroom management be concerned about the caste composition of the newsroom or indeed of an anchor or a reporter? Surely the primary focus should be on recruiting the best available talent. But, and there is a big but here, there are caste networks, often not instantly visible, that operate in our recruitment systems. You may give preference to someone known to you, known to your family and friends, from your school, from your neighborhood, from your state, and dare I say, possibly from your jati. It's the way it has been for decades in this country across professions. And yes, it is a reflection of the Brahminical social hierarchies that still exist around us. For any socially conscious citizen, therefore, all of this should be deeply troubling. But a caste census by itself isn't going to resolve the issue of ensuring greater diversity in a newsroom or indeed more inclusive coverage or in our office spaces. What will prove truly transformative, my friends, is giving an equal opportunity mandate to those who recruit journalistic talent. Can there be a conscious attempt made by news managers to recruit, for example, more young professionals from the Northeast, from Jammu and Kashmir, from the country's Adivasi heartland, indeed from Dalit homes? All other qualifications being equal, an equal opportunity mandate would specifically push to give more opportunities to those from communities who will otherwise lose out. But it isn't easy, I must warn you. Let me tell you an interesting story. I recall when I was at CNN IBN, we used to do a morning breakfast show which was anchored for a while by two very fine young professionals, Tracy Shilshi and Karma Paljor. Tracy was from Manipur, Karma was from Sikkim. We got them to anchor the show not because they were from the Northeast, but because they were good professionals who had risen through the journalistic ranks. But guess what? A few days into the show, a marketing manager rings me up and asks, Rajdeep, do you really want our channel to look like Singapore TV? For a moment, I didn't quite get what he was saying. But soon enough, I realized the racial undertones of what I had just been told. This is the kind of society, my friends, we inhabit, where we profess to celebrate diversity, but actually perhaps seek uniformity. The Dalit Adivasi question is even more vexed. I recall asking an HR manager once to go out and seek talented Dalit Adivasi journalism students who could make their way into our newsrooms. Guess what? He came back to me to say that he hadn't found any, and then asked me, do you really want Mr. Sardesai for us to be asking the caste of a student when we go for an interview to college campuses? Interestingly, while newsrooms haven't been able to break caste barriers, they've done marginally better with women and even with minority groups. When I joined the Times of India in 1988, we had a large staff, 70-80 people, but we had barely 2 or 3 women staffers on that large team. Now I would say that at least 25% of the desk and reporting teams across more newsroom are women. So gender diversity is growing. There are also a fair number of young Indian Muslims making their mark too. But here I want to pose a question again. When you hear a Muslim surname of an anchor, do you identify that anchor or a reporter by the quality of her work or by her religious identity? In an ideal world, caste or community shouldn't really matter. Only ability or so-called merit should. Sadly, we live in a less than ideal world where we need to strive to ensure greater diversity in the workplace, not by imposing it as a diktat from above, but building a genuine equal opportunities recruitment system across professions. As a postscript, this week I posed the Rahul Gandhi caste query across a few newsrooms. In a Hindi website newsroom, my question was greeted with stunned silence. Before I was told, sir, we are better than boast. We do have a few Dalits and Adivasis in our newsroom, but I guess, sir, they don't want to be identified as such. In another TV newsroom, there was in another major Hindi news TV newsroom, there was silence again before a senior journalist confessed, sir, I think there are only 3 to 4 journalists at best who are Dalits and Adivasis out of around 100 people on this news floor. Think about it. Clearly, building a socially diverse newsroom or indeed any truly diverse office space remains a huge challenge. The first step to resolving it may be to at least acknowledge the problem and try to then look for solutions. Think about it once again. That was the straight bat. Do of course subscribe to my YouTube channel for many more such videos. For now, stay well, stay safe. Jai Hind, Namaskar.